Eberechi Eze was nothing short of spectacular, brilliant, unplayable at times, and Arsenal thoroughly deserve this victory.
It's definitely Arsenal's to lose now.
I think this was a defining weekend. Manchester City dropping points, Liverpool getting beaten at home.
Without their captain, without their best central defender, without a recognised striker, they're capable of absolutely blowing teams away.
There was no hint of a fight from Tottenham Hotspur. The setup obviously is drawing a lot of criticism.
To go with the back five for only the second time this season, I didn't get it. And you don't need a back five when Arsenal don't have a recognised striker running in behind you. There's a lot wrong with Tottenham, but his system was to blame yesterday for just how easy Arsenal found it to cut through them.
Anybody can lose at the Emirates, and anyone could possibly, concede 4 goals. But to concede in the way they did, to play the way they did, to have the performance in the way they did. If I'm a Tottenham fan now, I'm feeling bruised enough for the result, but actually the performance was even scarier.
But I thought it was a pathetic performance from Tottenham. I thought it was lifeless. I thought the players looked like they didn't believe in the manager, didn't believe in the system. I know they've got issues. They haven't got a striker worthy of the name. But that is as poor a display in a derby match as I can remember.
It's Premier League All Access with me, Sam Matterface. Crookie is here, the Crookmeister, who I was a little bit disappointed to hear. Got home yesterday quicker than I did from the Emirates, despite leaving an hour after I did, stopping off at Gatwick to pick his missus up, and having a pint in a pub. Meanwhile, I hadn't even got home yet. I was in the station at Manchester Piccadilly texting him, asking him if he had got home, and he was like, "Oh yeah, I've been to the pub. I've picked Emma up from the airport, and I've just got in now, mate. Yeah, fine." I was like, "Oh great, that makes me feel loads better about my meandering 4-hour journey all the way back from the Emirates Stadium." But it's Crookie's world, and we're all just living in it. $1 Million Minto is here. How are you?
Morning, mate. Yeah, I saw the text last night. So, I was a bit worried you wouldn't even be back home in time to do it this morning. So it's good to see you, mate. You're looking bright and fresh-faced, so it hasn't affected me too much.
I got to be honest with you. Last night I sat down, watched Match of the Day Sunday with the hugest, the biggest seafood pizza you've ever seen in your life, and stuffed my face and took in all the action. And there was a lot of action to take in as well, wasn't there? Because yesterday, Crook and I was at the Emirates Stadium for a massive North London derby, the 198th. But only one of the teams turned up. Arsenal 4, Tottenham Hotspur 1. Let's start with a positive here, because Eberechi Eze was nothing short of spectacular, brilliant, unplayable at times, and Arsenal thoroughly deserve this victory, Crook.
Yeah, they did. And actually, I spoke to Mikel Arteta after the game. He was in tip-top form, as you'd imagine. Great weekend for Arsenal. They see their rivals slip up. They go 6 points clear at the top, and the player who snubbed Spurs for Arsenal becomes only the 4th player in history to get a hat-trick in this particular fixture, which is an incredible statistic. And he gave me a really revealing answer right at the end of the interview when I said, "Did you know he was going to be this good?" And he said, "You know what? I spoke to Thomas Tuchel, and he said this player is special." So that tells me that Eberechi Eze is pretty much guaranteed a place on the plane for the World Cup next summer.
There you go. Contacts in high places. Mikel Arteta liaising with the England manager over Arsenal signings. That could be a back-page story, that, Crook. Scott Minto, titles aren't won in November, but after that performance and this weekend, some people might beg to differ.
Yeah, and it's definitely Arsenal's to lose now, especially with City losing. We knew that would be a difficult game. We spoke with each other, didn't we, on Friday, and said it could be a pivotal weekend, but it's not a defining weekend. I mean, Pep said it before the weekend, and he's absolutely right. We're still not mathematically a third of the way through the season. But Arsenal, with how strong they are, with how vulnerable the others look, it's starting to look like that Chelsea might even be the nearest rivals. And you know what I think about them? They're not ready. So I still feel City are the only team that could possibly take the title off Arsenal. And they are capable, I believe, of going on like a 10-match winning run. But the way they're playing at the moment, so are Arsenal. And actually, if you ask me which team would more likely to do that, it would be Arsenal more so than City. So everything's looking rosy for sure for Arteta.
I mean, look, we obviously have knee-jerk reactions whenever there is a big result. And I think whenever someone establishes a lead, earlier in the season, everybody had already given the title to Liverpool and there was no chance for anybody else on the back of basically one free kick, let's be completely clear. But now, I think this was a defining weekend. I think it was a defining weekend because of Manchester City dropping points, Liverpool getting beaten at home and basically showing that they're not going to be able to challenge for the title, so almost knocking themselves out of the race. Manchester City is supposed to be the closest challengers and them dropping points at a difficult place to go in Newcastle, but Arsenal have already gone there and picked up 3. And Chelsea not quite being the team that are ready to challenge. So I think it was a defining weekend. But what I think would be more defining is the rest of the week. Arsenal have got Bayern Munich, who won 6-2 at the weekend. Elise, Kane, Jackson, all on the score sheet as they beat Freiburg by 6-2. And Chelsea next Sunday afternoon, Crook.
It's massive, and to get off to a flying start as they did ahead of such a huge week, I think will only help them grow in confidence. Obviously, we're going to get into it at the end of the week when we do the preview podcast, but I fancy Arsenal to go and win at Chelsea. I just think they're in that kind of form at the moment, even without their captain, without their best central defender, without a recognised striker, that they're capable of absolutely blowing teams away. And I tell you what, the atmosphere at the Emirates was absolutely crackling yesterday afternoon. The Angels song beforehand, the big tifo with Sol Campbell at front and centre, obviously a clear message to the Tottenham fans about his defection. I just wonder how they're going to replicate that when Bayern Munich come to town in what is another absolutely massive game. If they beat them, wow, that is going to be some statement to the rest of Europe.
I think this, a Tottenham angle to this as well. We'll get to that in just a second, but I do think it's really important to highlight just how controlled Arsenal were yesterday. There was a lot of chaos in the game against Sunderland 2 weeks prior to that. There was none of that. There was no hint of a fight from Tottenham Hotspur. From the minute the game started, the Kevin Danso reaction to the effort that sort of came off the goalkeeper and had to put it wide, the Rice volley. As soon as that happened, Arsenal were on the front foot. They didn't really, it wasn't like they peppered Vicario's goal. Let's not pretend that they were smashing shots in left, right and centre. They were just in control of the game and they looked like they could score when they decided that they wanted to do that. Whereas Tottenham Hotspur just were completely insipid. And the setup obviously is drawing a lot of criticism. 5 at the back, only the second time this season they've done that. They did that against PSG. They actually took a 2-goal lead in that game and then lost on penalties, Scott. But they were very poor. They were a little bit, they're within themselves a little bit, I think. And I think that there was a lack of intensity and aggression that you would expect from any team that goes into a North London derby. More importantly, if you are going to set up the way they did, you've got to have fight and desire to defend for your lives, and they did not.
Yeah, I'd like to at some point touch on Ebrese because I do think he's a sensational player, and I saw his talent at QPR, and I was saying that he's going to be a star of the future. But in terms of Spurs, yeah, I mean, look, you can play 5 at the back, but you also have to have the ball. And when you have the ball, you have to pass the ball. And when you pass the ball, you have to make 3 or 4 passes. Now, again, I want to sort of compliment Arsenal here because they suffocate you without the ball. You look at the teams and the way that they try to play against Arsenal. If you try and play through them, it's almost impossible to do it. They are one of the very best teams in Europe without the ball. And then what do they do with the ball? But I think for Spurs to turn up and play in the way they did, it's one thing. Anybody can lose at the Emirates and anyone could possibly, concede 4 goals. But to concede in the way they did, to play the way they did, to have the performance in the way they did, 2 central midfielders who are perhaps not great on the ball, Xavi Simon's on the bench. I like Thomas Frank, I do. And I think, again, to the compliment of Arsenal, showing that they're almost scared going there and how strong Arsenal are. But once you're there, my goodness me, you have to try and create something. And 2 shots on target, the first one being the goal, which was, what was it, a 2% chance on the XG. I mean, That's the biggest thing for me. If I'm a Tottenham fan now, I'm feeling bruised enough for the result, but actually the performance was even scarier.
Yeah, I mean, they didn't threat the David Raya goal at all. I mean, the one goal that they did scored was an absolute worldie from 45 yards, which would never go in, 98 times out of 100, as you've already pointed out. But they are responsible for the two lowest XG totals in the Premier League this season. The one they managed against Chelsea at home, 0.1, and the one they managed yesterday, which was 0.07. That just shows you that they had absolutely no teeth whatsoever. And it's a real lack of fight from Spurs. And Thomas Frank did apologise to fans post-match, Crook, and you spoke to him. And I wonder what his sort of demeanour was like, because I think you have two rules when you walk into a job like Tottenham. The first thing is that if you listen, they've had a lot of managers. They've had 7 managers in the time that Mikel Arteta has been in charge of Arsenal in the last 6 years. You have to win your home games and win fans over. You have to show them that you are able to put together a team that is going to be competitive, and you have to do it at home where everyone can see you. And you have to make sure that you go into your first North London derby with a chance, with an opportunity to bloody the nose of your rivals who you know are better than you. And he has done neither.
No, and I had a bit of a meltdown on air, didn't I, in the build-up to the second goal. And obviously, I'm not a Tottenham fan by any stretch of the imagination. I've got no axe to grind with Spurs, despite the narrative that some of their supporters have built up. But I was so frustrated on their behalf, because to go with the back 5 for only the second time this season, I didn't get it, because they're not good enough. Kevin Danso and Christian Romero are not good enough defenders to keep this Arsenal team out. And you don't need a back 5 when Arsenal don't have a recognised striker running in behind you. The fact they had 3 centre-backs and Marino and Eze just took it in turns to play in that false number 9 and pick them off at will is a real flaw in Thomas Frank's system. And he held his hands up. He said, I take responsibility. I was confident going into the game. I expected us to be a lot more competitive than we were. And I think maybe they were a bit unfortunate with the timing of the second goal, because I think once the first goal went in, he was already making his mind up to make changes to that system at half-time. The second goal really takes the game away from them. But I thought it was a pathetic performance from Tottenham. I thought it was lifeless. I thought the players looked like they didn't believe in the manager, didn't believe in the system. I know they've got issues. They haven't got a striker worthy of the name. But that is as poor a display in a derby match as I can remember. And I know they've got a wretched record at the Emirates, haven't won there in 15 years. Somebody told me it's one win in 33 games away from home against Arsenal. But he never gave them a chance, Thomas Frank. And from being in a position a few weeks ago where they could have been second in the table, if Manchester United beat Everton on Monday night, they go 10th, Tottenham. And it feels like it's been a really underwhelming start to the season. And those negative tactics will only add fuel to Thomas Frank's critics amongst the Spurs faithful.
Yeah, I think that the first point is that actually, the early tables can often skew your judgment. And I think that they did have some good results away from home, which really helped them. But the performances against Chelsea, the performance against Manchester United, the performance against Arsenal, and really, if you're a Tottenham fan, even though you finished 17th last year and you won the Europa League, you're measuring yourselves against those sort of opponents, not measuring yourself against Burnley. You're not measuring yourself against Bournemouth, even though that was a bit of a trudge for them as well. You're measuring yourself against what you think are the established elite, because that's where you want to be. And they are not performing in those matches. They probably should have lost when I went to the Arctic Circle with them. In fact, they definitely should have lost when I went to the Arctic Circle with them, and they dragged themselves back into that game somehow. So I do think that he has got a little bit of an issue, and I do think he's a good manager. I do think he's got great ideas, and he's got the ability to cultivate different styles of football, because we've seen that at Brentford, and Scott's highlighted that on this podcast a couple of times. But I'm not sure that they're buying into him. I'm not sure that they're buying into what he's saying. I don't know if he's selling it in the right way, or they're not having the sort of clear change from Postecoglou to Frank. But something's not right there, and it needs to get sorted pretty quickly, because otherwise they're going to find themselves in a situation where there is angst and disgruntlement again at Tottenham, and I think they could very much do without that.
Sam, just on that, let's not forget where they were last season. They won a very poor Europa League and they finished bottom of the rest. So that's something that Thomas Frank is having to sort out.
Do you think the fans are satisfied then, Scott, with what they've seen so far?
I think the fans are totally unsatisfied. But you've got to understand where he's coming from. He's coming from almost rock bottom, despite them winning the Europa League and the first trophy in almost 2 decades. He's got Solanke out. He's got Kulusevski out. He's got Maddison out. He hasn't got that kind of firepower that a lot of other teams have got that can turn something like an Eberezer. I mean, they were in for him. They looked like they were about to get him. And then what happens? Arsenal swoop in and get him and get the hat-trick. So
you've read that story before, though, haven't you? That's the Tottenham Hotspur annual.
Well, absolutely. And that's something which Thomas Frank has to turn around. So, look, should the Spurs fans be happy? No, of course not. But this is a long process. There's going to take time. It's going to take a long time. I just used the word process. I mean, how many times has Mikel Arteta used the word process over the last 6 years? So it's going to take time. They need the best players back. Daniel Levy's not around. They need a couple of windows. And then you can start to judge Thomas Frank, in my opinion.
I agree with you, but I go back to Mikel Arteta, and if we're going to use him as the yardstick here, because he's the only manager that in recent memory that has been able to trust the process and to employ a process and given the time and the keys to be able to do that, by the way, maybe Ruben Amorim will be the next one that gets that opportunity, and hopefully it works out for him as well. But what Arteta did at the beginning of his reign was he went out, made them win matches, and got them an FA Cup within 8 months of being in charge. He made sure that he had something tangible and positive to cling on to. I'm not saying that Thomas Frank's got to win something. I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is that what you need to do as a new manager at a big club is win the PR war. You've got to win the fans over. If you're losing home games and getting beaten up by Chelsea and Arsenal as the Tottenham manager, you are putting yourself under unnecessary pressure.
Yeah, look, in terms of those two teams you mentioned and the performance they put in yesterday, I couldn't agree more. But you just mentioned about Mikel Arteta. Despite him winning the FA Cup, somewhere in between the following years, Arsenal fans wanted him out. And if it wasn't for him and the hierarchy trusting the process, then he would have been out. So that's my point. Yes, you want to make a great first impression. You only get one chance at a first impression. But actually, Mikel Arteta has been given plenty of time and resources, let's be fair, because it's the strongest squad in the Premier League. Let's just give Thomas Frank a little bit of time as well.
Yeah, and I think that we should do that. But I'm saying I think he needs to realise his audience. He's got to make sure that he gets the feeling around the club right, because otherwise, Crookies will tell you. I mean, he is the saltmeister. The Tottenham fans are after him every 5 minutes. Because of his constant barracking of Ange Postecoglou. And even yesterday on Twitter, they were coming for him again, weren't they? Saying that you had an axe to grind. And the fact is that, they're just unhappy. They're cross. And I think getting them on side is really important, Crook.
I think
not for you, obviously, for Thomas Frank.
They overestimate their club's place in the food chain that I would care.
Oh, that's out of order. That's out of order.
No,
and now you're just fueling it.
It's true. Which is why I got called salty in the first place. In my lifetime, Tottenham have not really made a blot on the football landscape. Do you know, I'm still annoyed that Manchester United found a way to lose to them in Bilbao. And that was my overarching feeling coming away from yesterday, because they're not very good, Spurs. And Thomas Frank, as good a manager as he is, it's going to take a lot of work and a lot of signings and a lot of investment to turn this ship around. They need a centre forward. I still think they're a little bit short defensively. I'm not sure Romero is having a great season. Our own Stuart Pearce was pretty critical of him during that Manchester United game. So there's a lot wrong with Tottenham, but his system was to blame yesterday for just how easy Arsenal found it to cut through them.
Yeah, I'm sure you said ship. That's it for the North London derby. Let's take a look now at the team that was favourites by many to take the title at the beginning of the season, but appear to be clinging on now. Liverpool 0, Nottingham Forest 3. Liverpool's run of form has been leaving a lot to be desired, but no one, I don't think, thought that the champions would go 6 defeats in 7, not in the Premier League anyway. This is a full-blown crisis now, isn't it, Scott Minto?
Yeah. I'm not one to use the word crisis very often, but 6 defeats in 7. Forest have kept one clean sheet in their previous 20 league games. And the worrying thing for me is, the top teams find a way. They might go a goal down, but they find a way to come back and win. And I noticed that in it's 8 games in 11 now. They've been losing at half time, and they've lost all 8 of those. Now that's really worrying. That's why I feel justified in saying it's a crisis on top of the 6 defeats in 7. And Arne Slot, I love the way he talks. I love the way he comes across, but he's kind of just, I suppose it's in a very, it might be a clever way, a non-confrontational way. He just kind of just agrees with everything. Yeah, you're right. Well, what's the solution here? You know, this is Liverpool Football Club, where at the start of the season, everyone's thinking they're going to go and win the title. On paper, they've strengthened. And yet they've gone so far back that now not only are they not in the title race, they might well be struggling to get into the top 4. They need to turn it around and quickly. And this run of results is something which, the worrying thing is, I can't see any sort of shoots of recovery in it.
6 defeats in the Premier League means it's unlikely that they win the title. I think we can probably put that to bed now. Crookie doesn't need to put it into AI to find out whether or not that's happened before. But as Scott said, if they're struggling to finish in the Champions League, that's going to be a problem, because you can't spend the GDP of Liechtenstein and then be out of the big boys competition the next year, can you?
No, you can't. And I think it is an issue because I think the Premier League is a lot stronger this year. You only have to look at the teams at the bottom being much more competitive. Leeds gave a good account of themselves for a long time against Villa. Burnley, as you were mentioning before we came on air, made it difficult in that first half against Chelsea. You take Wolves out of the equation, there are no easy games this season. And you look at the quality of the teams competing for places in the top 4. Arsenal and Manchester City are going to be there. Chelsea have put themselves in a great position. Villa are having a great run of form. Manchester United, touchwood, have a run of games coming up now where they can really make hay. And then you've got the likes of Bournemouth and Brighton who are dangerous floaters as well. So I think they've got a lot to do. Liverpool, only the 4th time, as you mentioned, in Premier League history, they've lost by 3 goals at Anfield. That is not a statistic that Arne Slot will want to wake up to this morning. And there are problems all over the pitch. Virgil van Dijk, I think, has been really poor this season. I'm not sure he's been a great leader either. Canate.
What did you make of his comments afterwards? Because you get a little bit funny with him. You and him don't have a great relationship, do you? And he came out and had a little pop at his teammates, didn't he, after the game?
Yeah, I think he needs to look at himself before he looks at his teammates, because him and Canate have both been culpable for a lot of the goals that Liverpool have conceded. And this is what I talk about. I think he can look a good leader when things are going well, but when the chips are down, I'm not sure he's a particularly positive influence in the dressing room. Milos Kerkez has struggled to make the step up from being brilliant at Bournemouth to a Liverpool player. That's a signing that hasn't worked out. Isak, I think I'm right in saying, has now gone 200 days in the Premier League without scoring a goal. Now, when you spent a British record transfer fee on a striker, that simply isn't good enough. Florian Wirtz has struggled. The midfield doesn't look as compact and solid as it did last season. So there's not one problem that Arne Slot needs to fix. There are a multitude of problems, and they're going to lose more games along the way.
I think we have to caveat all of our discussions, and I mentioned this on air on Sunday's Game Day Live, with the fact that Liverpool are grieving, and that anything we say about them does take that into consideration. We have to remember that was such a massive tragedy. And of course, over the course of this year, it is going to affect them, maybe even longer than that. And I think Andy Robertson articulated it brilliantly when he was talking about Diogo Jota in the aftermath of Scotland's big performance in the World Cup qualifiers. But there is a big problem here on the field, and you can't ignore the fact that they're losing game after game after game. And I wonder what happens with Arne Slot, because social media is a very toxic place, and immediately everyone just reaches for the is it the gunge at the Noel Edmonds sort of house party? He used to do that. They want to gunge him, get rid of him, or the big red chair at Graham Norton, just get rid of him. That's the sort of solution to everybody's problem. But does he get a free pass, Scott, because of the title win in his debut campaign, because of the huge amount of changes, because of the effect on everyone of the passing of Diogo Jota in such tragic circumstances? Or does there become a point where it becomes apparent that this is now not salvageable? Where will the hierarchy stand on this?
Well, it might be a question for Crookie, as he knows Richard Hughes pretty well. But what I would say is, it's one thing for it not to working. And again, I mentioned it earlier. If I'm Richard Hughes, I'm sitting down, I'm saying, okay, we're here. We know it was amazing last season. We didn't expect it at all. If anything, it'd almost be sort of role reversal of last season and this. We know we've brought in a lot of players. It does take time. We were hoping we'd be a heck of a lot better than this, but I didn't see it going this bad. What you got? What's your solution? What you telling me? And I'd look him in the whites of his eyes, and if he looks like he's bluffing, then I'd start to worry. But I don't think he is. I personally think, and I don't know him, I never met him, just the way he sort of come across and the way he dealt with last season, people saying it was Klopp's team, and I know Crookie's one of them. Yes, it was Klopp's team, but Klopp couldn't win with Klopp's team. And actually, he did tweak the style, and he did put Gravenberch in just in front of the back four. So he is a very clever, intelligent coach. But that's what I'd be saying, Sam. The results are one thing, but I need to look at someone and have a sit down one-to-one chat and saying, do you know what's going wrong here? Do you know how to fix it?
Yeah, and interestingly, I think it's quite sort of. I mean, let's not reinvent history. They had lots more controlling games last year. You know, they were really good at controlling matches. There's no control now. I mean, it's wild swings of momentum, and teams can get the better of them. You know, he's given you the menu of things they don't like, and people were doing that. It could have been worse. Let's be clear. I mean, Igor Jesus has a goal that's chalked off for handball. I mean, Christ, I mean, it wasn't handball, was it? I mean, it hit him on the top of maybe hit him on the top of the shoulder. It was more of the chest. I mean, the only reason that goal wasn't overturned and given was because on field, the referee decided that there was a handball and there was no clear evidence by the VAR to overturn it. It was a goal. It should have been 4-0. It could have been much worse for Arne Slot. And by the way, the Men in Black podcast does delve into that decision and the decision to allow Eberici Eze's first goal for Arsenal. So if you want to scroll up on the Premier League All Access feed, you can listen to the Men in Black podcast or go on the talkSPORT YouTube channel. And Chris Foy will tell you why Arsenal were a little bit lucky to get that second goal in that game. So don't think that we haven't dealt with it here. We deal with it on the Men in Black podcast because there's so many incidents now with VAR. We can't contain it to just the Premier League All Access podcast. To go through the goals themselves, I mean, I could go through them all and just pick them apart, but the defending is absolutely appalling for every single one. I went through yesterday with the video and went through the analysis and sort of tried to pick apart, you know, where they could have got better. And the fact is that every single action that they make in the build-up to all four of the goals is appalling. They're not switched on. They're not assertive. They're not trying to get there and make first contact. They're not aware of movements. There's a quick free kick for the final goal, which everybody is switched off for and not aware of. And then no one gets out quick enough to Amari Hutchison. So all over the place, it is shoddy from Liverpool and it needs to improve. They have a massive game in the Champions League this week against PSV. And obviously, there's a lot of Dutch connections in the Liverpool hierarchy. It's an important match for them, Crook, isn't it?
It is, just to steady the ship and get a bit of confidence. I mean, normally Liverpool at home to PSV would be a foregone conclusion, but nothing seems to come easy at this moment in time. And then you look into the weekend, they go to West Ham on Sunday lunchtime, which again, West Ham, 7 points out the last 3 games, look to be playing pretty well under Nuno Espirito Santo. So that's going to be a tough game as well. So as big a week it is for Arsenal in terms of the title race, this was a huge set of fixtures for Liverpool. And obviously it's got off to the worst possible start. I think they'll beat PSV, but I don't think it will be with any degree of comfort.
So, Sam, sorry, just on the fixtures, I think they're very kind. I think look, if they don't beat PSV and they don't beat the teams that's coming up, then it's a massive, massive crisis. But with respect to West Ham, and you know what, I love West Ham, they could easily have and should have lost that game after being 2-0 up at the weekend against Bournemouth. So Areola was absolutely on fire in that one. Sunderland at home, you know, we know they're a different team home and away as well as they're playing, and they are. Liverpool absolutely should be winning that. And Leeds United away. Again, atmosphere, brilliant, but that's a poor team right now. So those type of fixtures, and even Brighton at home as well, again, and we can always make an argument for why these could be difficult, but Liverpool Football Club have to be winning these games. And if they had a set of fixtures almost to, you'd obviously throw in Wolves there if you could, and they have just after Boxing Day, it's pretty kind. If we get to New Year's and they're in the same position, then there will be major, major questions being asked.
PSV, by the way, top of the Dutch league by 6 points. They beat NAC Breda at the weekend by 1-0. They thrashed RZ Alkmaar before the international break. They haven't had a great Champions League campaign. They drew with Olympiacos in Athens, but do you know what? You can't predict anything when it comes to Anfield at the moment. Liverpool struggling to find their rhythm. Can Arne Slot turn it around? We'll find out. That game live on talkSPORT in midweek. Newcastle against Manchester City. Newcastle 2, Manchester City 1. This was an opportunity for Manchester City to close the gap on Arsenal, put a bit of pressure on them ahead of the North London derby, and they failed to do it, Scott. And they failed to do it because Newcastle United, as maybe some people thought they might, really turned up for this game on Saturday night.
Yeah, and look, we can talk Newcastle, and Eddie Howe has talked about, and we've talked about, the injuries, the signings haven't been great, but and even the combination of the Premier League and Champions League, which actually following their games hasn't been too bad. But it boils down to home and away, and it's at home, St James's Park. I think they're definitely unlucky to lose against Liverpool. I think they were unlucky to lose against Arsenal. I thought the performance there was sensational. So to go to Newcastle, Pep knew it though, because Arsenal had done it, because Liverpool had done it, even though they're kind of out of it, they kind of had to find a way to do it, and they didn't. First of all, what a brilliant advertisement for the Premier League. I mean,
That was terrific.
What a game. I mean, how was that not 4-4 at half time with it being 0-0? And yet
they missed some chances, didn't they? Both teams missed some chances. I mean, Harvey Barnes missed a cracking chance at 0-0. Phil Foden missed a really good chance at 0-0.
Yeah, there were possible penalties that could have been given as well. Some brilliant chances, some great saves. It was just a fantastic game to watch, and what the Premier League should be all about. But City lost and Arsenal won. And I know what you're saying about defining, and we may look back and say that was a big weekend. I think we'll look back. I predicted Arsenal at the start of the season, so there's more than just one weekend where you look back and say that was it, because the Premier League is more than that. It's relentless. But for City to go there and not get anything, I think that was a big blow for Pep.
Look, it's been a tough start to the season in terms of points on the board in the Premier League for Eddie Howe, and having to readjust without Isaac and put a new striker in, play to a different type of system because Johan Visser hasn't been fit. So they've used Voltemada, and he's more of a player that drops deep and links the play, and he needs people to go beyond him, which is why Harvey Barnes has been so successful this season. If you've watched him in the Champions League, he scored 2 terrific goals against Benfica by doing exactly that. But it's 7 wins in 10 games in all competitions. Everyone was focusing on that Premier League table, and I totally get that because the form hasn't been perfect. But then you factor in where they've dropped points. At home to Arsenal, at home to Liverpool. They dropped points against Brighton away when they were much better in that game and should have won the match. I think most people accept that. I know Eddie, I know what he's like. And as soon as he said, we're under scrutiny, I thought, whoever they've got next is in massive trouble, because when he has started to put the pressure on his unit and his team, you know that he's got a plan coming. You know that there's something brewing in the offing. And everyone thinks he's a nice guy and he's all very friendly, and he is. Very level-headed guy, never gets too angry, never gets too down. But if he is coming out with that steely glare, looking you in the eye and saying, yeah, we've got a problem and we need to do something about it, I'd be worried, because he's coming for you. And I wasn't surprised about the performance, Crook.
No, and I seem to remember a similar situation last season. Was it after they lost at Brentford away? He came up with some pretty strong comments. There was a bit of soul searching. I think there was when he changed the formation, sort of stumbled upon that midfield trio that have been so successful. So you're right. There's certainly a lot more steel to Eddie Howe than people give him credit for. You don't have the kind of success that he's had in management without that steel and determination. And St James's Park remains a tough place to go, because even when they do get beat, Arsenal needed a very late winner. So did Liverpool, needed that stoppage time goal. And they had chances against Barcelona. So this was never going to be easy for Manchester City. But if we're going to bring it back to the title race, this is at the moment what sets Arsenal apart from the rest. They have the capability to go to places like Newcastle, suffer some adversity and find a way to win. At the moment, I still don't think this Manchester City team necessarily have that in their armoury, and they're clearly still too reliant on Erling Haaland, who missed a couple of decent chances.
Newcastle United take on Marseille in the south of France on Tuesday night, live on talkSPORT from the Stade Velodrome. I'll be doing that game, looking forward to it. It should be a cracking match. Roberto De Zerbi against Eddie Howe. I thought Newcastle were really good in the game, and I want to give them a lot of credit, but I do also think they benefited from one or two iffy decisions. Now, the Men in Black podcast I've already mentioned goes through them all, but I'm going to ask Scott Minto for his judgment. Should Phil Foden have been given a penalty in the first half for a foul by Cher?
Okay, I've been asked this question, and I don't know whether I'm biased being a defender, but what do you expect the defender to do? You know, in the way
Play the
that,
ball?
well, that he's tried. He's tried, and Phil
Yeah,
Foden's
and he
had,
didn't.
and Phil Foden's had the shot. If he's could have gone past him, I would say then it's a definite penalty. But he had the shot. He's trying to block it, and then after the shot's gone off, contact has been made. That's my opinion.
Crook?
I think it was a pen. Yeah, I think there was enough contact with the player. Obviously, the ball had already gone, as Scott sort of alluded to. So, yeah, I think Manchester City can feel aggrieved about that one.
Okay, so Scott says no pen, Defenders Union. Crook says pen. Find out what Chris Foy says on the Men in Black podcast. Handball by Malik Tiao, yes or no?
I'm going to give the benefit of the doubt on that one and say no.
Yeah, I agree as well. I mean, look, I was watching it, and should his hands be up there? But actually, the question is unnatural position. I know it's there, and you're thinking, well, keep your arms down, but it was natural for him just to go like that. So I would say no. But I listen, I can understand people disagreeing with me on both those points.
The winning goal from Newcastle was really difficult to unpick because there was a suggestion of a foul by Voltemada. Was Bruno offside? Was there another offside in the build-up to it? Did Barnes interfere with the goalkeeper? Did Bruno interfere with the goal? It was just it was an absolute mess, and they spent a long time going through it, and ultimately decided that it wasn't a foul by Voltemada. Diaz played Bruno onside, and there was no interference with Donnarumma, the goalkeeper. But I think amidst all of that, what was missed, and that you can argue about it, and the T-shirt line, and we explain exactly all about that on the Men in Black podcast. But the flick by Harvey Barnes to get it under control to smash it into the net was terrific, Scott.
I'm really glad you mentioned that, because if you didn't, I was about to, and I've not heard enough people say that. I mean, first of all, Bruno, the header he's done, he's at the far post, he's under pressure, and he's realizing he can't come properly through it with his neck because he's just going to go over because he's stretching so much. So he almost takes a little bit off it, just brings his head and neck back a little bit. So it comes off the crossbar. Harvey Barnes, if you look at what he's done, he's lifted up almost like with a little flick with his right foot, and then the touch to bring it down for it to stop dead. On top of that, the composure then to make sure you got players around you, to not snatch at it because it's bouncing, it's going to go over. That actually was a brilliant goal from Harvey Barnes. It really was. But that first touch, I think not enough people have mentioned.
Harvey Barnes has played for England. He has done so once, but he remains qualified for Scotland. I know that you, Crook, are very au fait with the rules of when you can play for different countries, because I think either you tried to play for Jamaica or you tried to get one of your friends to play for Jamaica, and you went through the process at one stage, if I'm not too mistaken. But will he possibly go to the World Cup, not for England, but for Scotland?
Well, it's not like you to put me on the spot, is it? But I think it's to do with how many caps you've won by a certain age. Now, he was around 22, 23 when he won his only England cap. So I think under
in a friendly.
Yeah, so I think under that criteria, I think he is still very much qualified to play for Scotland. And I'm sure Steve Clarke will be on the phone, because what an addition he would be to their squad in North America next summer. With the greatest will in the world, and he's having a decent season, I don't think he's going to force his way into Thomas Tuchel's plans.
Let's dive into the very depths of the table now, and that all-important relegation battle. Wolves 0, Crystal Palace 2. And what a tough start for your old mate Rob Edwards, Crook.
Yeah, I think there were some positives, particularly in the first half. I think they were more competitive, showed a little bit more commitment to the cause. But ultimately, I think those 90-odd minutes would have told Rob Edwards, not that he was in any doubt anyway, that this squad is not very good. They are the worst bunch of players in the Premier League because they've sold off all their prized assets and not replaced them properly. And I think it's going to be a long slog. And having said last week that, I think he will pick up some points, I'm now starting to worry if Derby's record low tally is under threat, because they aren't very good, are they? Whoever's in the dugout.
They need a miracle, don't they, Scott Minto?
I thought Crookie said that Robert said they're much better players than he had at Luton,
He
and
did say that.
yeah, and he
Yeah,
was really,
listen, that was his belief. That was one of the reasons he took the job.
Does he change his mind now? Has he done a bit of a crook flip-flop? He's gone in there, seen them and gone, sorry, fellas, I made a mistake. Can I go back to Middlesbrough?
I hate to say it, but I touched on it on Thursday. If you look at the fixtures they've got all the way up until the new year, we might start talking about that and Derby's record like we were with Southampton last season. So, yeah, it's a tough few weeks. That was a big game against a very good side, but they needed to find the way to win.
Yeah, you ain't going to beat Crystal Palace, I'm afraid, if you're Wolverhampton Wanderers. Crystal Palace too good, too organised. The manager's absolutely superb. Even if the players change, the system and the organisation is at such a level that they always seem to perform. I've seen them a lot this season, and I think there've been one performance when I think they were off it, and that was against Larnaca in the Conference League. I think you were there, Crook, as well that night. And actually, even then, they were that bad, and they only conceded a goal because they gave an opportunity to the opponent, not because of anything else. The structure sort of holds them, even when they're not playing particularly well. The structure sort of holds them in position. Burnley 0, Chelsea 2. Not the most spectacular game. I was there for this one. It was a very cold, dank day in Lancashire, and it was a bit of a dank game, really. Chelsea did score a brilliant goal. Jamie Gittin's superb delivery. It was a tricky match because it came straight after the international break. It was an early kickoff. Chelsea decided to make a lot of changes with Barcelona, who are 1 point off the top in Spain, in view. They play them on Tuesday night. Now, he left out Caicedo because he'd been away in North America. He left out Estevao, who'd played twice for Brazil, although that was in Europe. And Chelsea got the job done. And I suppose the point here, Scott, is that despite all of those factors, it was pretty routine.
Yeah. Massive week for Chelsea. We talked about massive week for Arsenal, massive week for Chelsea as well with the Barcelona game. And it's not gone quite as we would have wanted, even though half understandable with Chelsea in Europe. And then, of course, Arsenal at the weekend. So this was get in, get the job done, don't get any injuries, get out. And with the team selection was interesting because he definitely had Barcelona and Arsenal in mind, which then puts even more pressure on making sure you get those 3 points. Because, we know that he's a bit Marmite with the Chelsea fans, and with team selection, he likes to make lots of changes. So the fact that he made the changes, he rested some of these players, got the win, clean sheet, brilliant.
Second in the table. Are they Arsenal's biggest challengers, Crook, this week? I mean, I know you've changed your mind on that a few times so far. So are you now pinning it on Chelsea?
Well, listen, I'll go back to the start of the season, and I said to you guys at a double-figure price, I thought the bookies were sleeping on Chelsea a bit. They just won the Conference League. They qualified for the Champions League on the last day of last season. They won that Club World Cup, albeit without Barcelona and Liverpool there. And I thought they'd had a good summer.
Because they didn't qualify?
In terms of signings. So I did see them as potential title contenders. Are they Arsenal's biggest challengers? I would still say Manchester City probably are the biggest threat, but you can't argue with what Chelsea have done so far this season. Sunday will tell us a lot. This is I would say Sunday is bigger than Barcelona. It's always an occasion taking on Barcelona in the Champions League, but they've got enough games in that competition that they'll qualify for the knockout rounds anyway. If they could beat Arsenal on Sunday, that would be a real statement.
Yeah, it sure certainly will. And Crook and I will be there together, won't we, on Sunday again? Well, we've had a couple of weeks where we haven't hung out very much, Scott. Got to be honest. Scott, he went to Portugal. I went off to the Lake District. We've had a couple of games which haven't sort of gelled together. So he's been in a different place to me. He's getting a little bit antsy. We haven't had a special night in a hotel room for a very long time.
We haven't.
But we've got a couple of big days this week. And we've got a night out on Friday. We're all going out Friday. Is that right?
Well, Minto was checking his diary last time.
Oh, yeah. I forgot.
No.
Social calendar alert. Yeah.
No. I should. I don't like saying yes and then letting people down, but I should be there, mate. I also will be there at Stamford Bridge because I'm working for Malaysia TV as well. So
we've got Friday night out and Sunday night out. This is good.
Let's do it.
Oh, definitely. And by the way, the podcast on Monday is going to be rancid. Only joking. We're very professional here. Well, me and Scott are. Fulham again. Fulham against Sunderland. 1-0 winners. Fulham on Saturday, and a silver lining at last, Crook.
Yeah, big win for them, obviously, with their away form in particular, and a bit of tension behind the scenes between the owners and the manager over his refusal or reluctance to commit to a new long-term contract. But yeah, it was an important victory. Obviously ends Sunderland's fairy tale start to the season as well, and it'll be interesting to see how they react to it. But yeah, I think at home, Fulham are going to win enough games to keep their heads above water.
Okay, looking forward to the week ahead. There's so much action on talkSPORT. I'll be at Manchester United on Monday night. Tuesday night, Marseille versus Newcastle is live on talkSPORT. Wednesday night, Arsenal against Bayern Munich and Liverpool PSV, the fulcrum of our coverage on talkSPORT and talkSPORT 2. Thursday night, Europa and Conference League action for you. Friday night championship action. Saturday, we've got live commentary from Tottenham against Fulham, which is late on Saturday night, kicks off at 8 o'clock, plus a load of EFL games as well. And on Sunday, we've got a bonus. Crystal Palace on Sunday lunchtime, live on talkSPORT. They play Crook.
The mighty Manchester United. Up the Reds.
I thought you'd be excited by that, but instead of going to that game in London, Crook is going to Chelsea against Arsenal because he's a glory hunter and he wants to follow the team that are going to win the title. And it's probably going to be one of those two now, isn't it? We'll see you next week.